Is 6:00 p.m. on October 21st. My name is Deanne Shaw and I'm president of the Aberdeen City Council. And welcome to the first Zoom meeting of the Aberdeen City Council. We're happy that everyone could join us tonight. Some of us are new to Zooming. Some of us have been doing it since March, but at the risk of being tedious, I just wanted to share a couple of what they call netiquettes, practices for having meetings on the net. And so one of the things that we ask is that if you're not the mayor or the council, that you stay muted and have your video off unless you are presenting or going to or need to address the council. There's two, for the council's benefit, those of us who haven't done this before, there's two types of people in a meeting like this. There's attendees and there's participants. As council members, we are participants, which means that we can speak and have live video. But in the background are all the members of the public who choose to join in and watch our meeting tonight. And they don't speak, but they are present, and we thank them for attending. Last I heard, we didn't really have any attendees, but that's okay. Maybe people will sign on now that we're getting up and going. So we have two presentations tonight. One is we have two guests who are also participants, and that is our architect, Matthew Coates. And we'll also have a presentation tonight from our finance director, Patricia Soul, on some budget information that we need this fall. I also chose, given some recent publicity and questions that have come up, I also asked the finance director if she would make any museum board members who join us tonight participants, because in case council has questions for them. But if they come on the meeting, they'll be muted as well unless you have a question. So thank you. Oh, one other thing I wanted to make sure and do publicly is thank the city staff for all the support you've given the council as we transition to this new format. It's I know it was a lift, but I really think the council appreciates this, and I think the public will too. So with all that said, Clerk Soul, do you think there's anything else we need to share before we go into the agenda?
We're getting attendees right now. So they all are showing that they're attendees and hopefully are able to view. There's nothing that I need to do to add them. So I believe they're all on.
Thank you. So at this time, I again thank you everyone for coming, and could you please take the roll, Clerk Soul?
Okay. Councilmember Andrews.
I would just share that Councilwoman Andrews is going to be joining us a little bit late. She let me know she's returning. She'll be as soon as she gets home from work.
Okay. Councilmember Ellis.
Yes, here.
Councilmember Francie.
Here.
Councilmember Gordon. Councilmember Gordon, I see you on here. Can you unmute? I'll come back. Councilmember Haviland. Councilmember Cashman.
Clerk Soul, I would just share that Councilmember Cashman was not certain she would have internet tonight, so she might be not in attendance.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Present.
Councilmember Mackey.
I'm here.
Councilmember Richrod.
Present.
Councilmember Ross.
Here.
Councilmember Shaw.
Here.
Councilmember Short.
Here.
Mayor Shave. Councilmember Gordon.
Here.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry.
No problem. Councilmember Gordon.
I'm still on mute. No,
Nope, you're unmuted.
there,
Okay,
there.
gotcha.
Okay, now, let's get that. Gotta get out of your way.
So
Okay.
we show
Oh,
3 absent and the rest present.
Thank you. Mayor Shave, you're welcome to be on video. You're as part of the meeting. Would love to have you join us. As I stated earlier, the purpose of our meeting tonight is one of the purposes is a presentation from Matthew Coates. At this time, our staff who are helping with this are Lisa Scott, the Community Development Director, and Rick Sanger, our Public Works Director. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Director Scott to introduce Matthew Coates.
Thank you. It's with great honor that I introduce Matthew Coates. He has been with us since we initially started a planning session for downtown, and where we came up with the council's goals and agendas for what a downtown looks like. And now the year has escaped me. It's been ongoing, I think, since 2012. Where he started with a group that was put together by the state to help guide us in some things that we could do to motivate in downtown. And besides the traffic calming, which was taking the lanes from 3 to 2, and the bulb outs and all of the things that we do to make a good downtown. And one of them was also create a vibrant entrance to downtown with a visitor information center was where the Gateway Center started. And from that, we actually did a contract with Mr. Coates. And so I'm gonna kick it off to him and let him kind of, I don't know if you, Matthew, I know we talked briefly, I didn't know, because we've got almost an entire new council now. And so I didn't know if you wanted to give a real brief kind of where you started to where, you know, we left off, and then from today moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, council members, for having me this evening. So my name is Matthew Coates. I'm president of Coates Design Architects, and I definitely see some new faces here. So it's nice to meet you. I see Mayor Pete Shave there. Good to see you, Pete. I'd love to tell you a little bit about the history of the project, so you kind of have an appreciation for how we've ended up where we are, and certainly happy to answer any questions you have about the history. As Lisa said, I've been on the project and my firm has been involved for many years, 6 to 8 years, and primarily focused on the Gateway Center, as it's been dubbed. And I hope you all know where the site is. It's where the old Selmer building was. Do you all know that location right there across the bridge? And you know, that location was identified, you know, long ago, and we did look at ways to save the building or use that building and add on to it. We had a structural analysis done. It was deemed that it was just financially not feasible. It was like $2 million or something extra in order to try and save the building. But we did investigate options that where we would save just the facade of the building and then kind of build around that within that facade. And those also didn't pencil out very well because of the seismic retrofit. The cost of the seismic retrofit that would be required was really extensive. So it was decided back at that time that it just wasn't feasible to save that building. And so we design process, and I did several meetings with the community there in Aberdeen at the log pavilion, and we engaged the community in like visioning and pinning up images and talking about priorities, and we did a lot of that before we even started designing. And then we did finally start designing, and we ended up presenting, I think, 5 different options, and then we sought input. Everyone kind of voted, you know, at those open community meetings. We had really good attendance back then. That was several years ago. Really good attendance, lots of good input, and ultimately a design was chosen to move forward. And that design back then was inspired by the old log drying, or not, but lumber drying sheds. It had kind of a similar form to that, where they would sticker the wood and let it dry in there. We designed that building to kind of mimic that form and that structure. And so we signed contract with the city. We proceeded to design that building. It was a 2-story building. It was going to house offices. It was going to house maybe a gift shop, a little cafe. It was going to have a small little display about the history of Aberdeen, as well as the offices for the county with the Greater Grays Harbor County. And then we proceeded pretty far through the design process, beginning what we call design development. We had structural engaged, and the mayor at that time decided that the project was too expensive, and so we were directed to redesign it. And so we redesigned it as a 1-story building, and we cut a lot of the scope out of the building, not only just the top, but we also brought in the sides a bit. And then recently, we think that has maybe changed, partially due to the vision of the new mayor, but also because of the museum fire that happened, unfortunately. That has opened up a new need for display of art, artifacts. And so the scope is now, as I understand it, potentially increasing to now back to partially a 2-story solution. And luckily, we had already gone pretty far with the 1-story version. And luckily, the way that design really lended itself pretty straightforward to adapting it to a 2-story option. So that was actually a good thing. And now I can, if I can share my screen, I can kind of show you kind of the latest sketches. Now, please understand that we had taken this. We have technical drawings that had gone much further than what I'm going to show you, but with the change in program and conversations with the Historical Society, the question was asked of us, like, how if you were going to put a partial display for the Historical Museum, what would the building look like, and how would it lay out? And so we've presented a couple of those, and so today I'll show you kind of the chosen sketch of that that could be then translated into the documentation phase as well. Am I allowed to? Yes, I can. Okay.
So, Mr. Coates, while you're doing that, thank you for taking part in our first Zoom while we figure out how to do this. And I would just ask council members, since this is a public meeting, that I might have misspoke earlier, or maybe is that I think council members should have their video on, and it's the non-participants that should stay muted and not have video unless they're addressing the council. So when we come back to after the presentation, I think the public wants to see us.
So y'all know the site there, and this is just a floor plan, but the bridge, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so and I'll zoom in here so you can kind of see. So the bridge is to the right, and then downtown is to the left. And to kind of orient you on the site. And so this is the top floor. Let me go to the bottom floor. So this is right now the preferred option as we understand it, but obviously we need your support and blessing on this. So currently, basically you enter a glassy entry here. There's an elevator that is surrounded by the stairs going up. There's a catwalk, and then this is the main exhibit space in the center. So there's about 1,500 square feet of exhibit space. And then we've designed it for these pivoting doors. So there'd be these big panels that can close that space off or open it completely to the more museum space, or there could be a cafe down here as well. In the old design, the cafe was on the upper portion, but we switched it just to get more space for exhibits. And then on the upper left here, this is kind of your back of house area for the museum. Incidentally, if you don't know, our firm designed the Bainbridge Island Museum of Art. And so we have experience designing museums, and we know kind of what needs to take place in terms of spaces for, storage of vitrines and artwork and a curation space to kind of reframe things. And then also the mechanical requirements, which are actually pretty robust need to be pretty robust for museum space. And then on the south side, you got your restrooms right off the lobby, a warming kitchen and a serving area for the cafe, a gift shop that's accessible right off the exhibit space, and then more mechanical for this wing over here. And then then the mechanical, electrical in the dumpster area would be screened off from the public near this loading dock. And then upstairs, this is all open to below. So that's like a nice 2-story space. And I'll show you a picture of that in a second. And then these are all basically, there's 4 office suites that could be rented out as a potential source of revenue for the city or the county, depending on how that works out. We envision that some of this, I think this one would be for the Greater Grays Harbor, but there's plenty of room in here for other office space to be utilized. And then I can show you one second. And this is a rendering of the exterior. So this was the original design. And again, we can adapt this to be that 2-story version if directed to do so. The idea of the design is clearly a Northwest, heavy timber, lumber, capital kind of feel to it. Big, open, glassy atrium, very inviting. I also think it's going to be beautiful, and it's intentionally right on axis with the bridge. So when you come across the bridge, you're going to see this beautiful glowing lantern. And the whole hope here was to try and get people to stop and learn about Aberdeen and partake in the local economy. That's part of why we're doing this project with you. And here's just a sketch. Obviously, it could be different. This was like more centered on music. This was quite some time ago. But you get an idea of what it would look like on the inside. It's kind of this 2-story space. There's a catwalk across here, these bar joists floating up above, and these big panels that can rotate. They can display art, and they can rotate to open or close the space, keep it very versatile like that. So that's about it. That's kind of where we are today. So if you guys have any questions at all, I'm sure you do, please throw them at me. I'm happy to answer.
This is Councilmember Ellis. I was wondering, will this building be supported by pin piles? What will give it stability in that landfill sediment?
Yeah, it would. They're actually going to be, I think, driven piles, or they're going to be auger cast piles, just due to the soil conditions down there. Yes.
Anyone else? So, Mr. Coates, before you were asked to redo the first floor, what was going to be happening on the first floor before you redesigned it this latest time?
Just on the first floor, there was a gift shop, again, a display and a gathering area, and there was an event space. The whole southern wing there, I guess it's western wing, but on the bottom of that whole space was an event space, and there was like a fold down stage, and it was intended that you could hold gatherings there and even rent the space out to people. And other offices as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how much floor space is available for office space? Square footage?
There is, I don't know off the top of my head, Mayor, I'll pull it up real quickly. For office space, you got about, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, like almost 6,000 square feet.
Wow.
Just under 6, it's like 5,800 or something like that.
And what's the square foot of the footprint?
The whole building? Oh, the footprint?
Yes.
I should know these numbers right offhand. I apologize. I have to admit, we haven't been working on this project for quite some time. So it looks like it is, I'm going to say, I don't have a number there too. I don't know. Hutch is on here. Hutch, do you know the footprint?
Yes, Matthew, it's about almost 17,000 square feet.
Just the footprint?
Oh, I'm sorry, just the footprint, not half of that. So 8,500 square feet.
Okay. Hutch is the project architect. So I thought he might know.
I remember in some of the initial discussions, there was talk about having kind of an area out there where we could have potentially like move the Aberdeen Sunday Farmers Market out there. Is there still room for that?
Yes. Yes, thank you for asking that. Yeah, that was the idea. And I think there was some talk of even closing down, what is that, F Street that was right in front there? And maybe it could be vacated permanently or just temporarily, maybe on Sundays or Saturdays, you could kind of open it up and have a farmer's market. It'd be a great thing to do to get people to, come downtown and invest in their community. Yeah.
So back to the office square footage.
Yeah.
We're looking at 6,000 square feet available, and that's pretty fluid as far as adjustments.
Yes.
For sizes. Like Greater Grace Harbor wants X number of square feet, and then maybe somebody else just wants a personal small office. Somebody else wants a little bigger one. It's real versatile to adjust for those types of things, is my understanding.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. We can, we're at a good point now where if you want to kind of tell us what you think is appropriate, we can modify the plans to suit that. There's a little bit of potential conflict just to be aware of as you're thinking, because the way I understood it, and I mean my conversations with the museum are fairly old, but if they are thinking about moving the major exhibits into this building, they really wanted more area. So there was this pressure to make the lower floor even bigger. And that sort of was like, okay, well, if the lower floor is bigger and the top is an echo of that, then, you end up with all this extra office space. But we can definitely make more of it two-story space. So you don't have all that build out on the top. It's just to kind of suit the vision that you have.
I think what my point is, just for council, is one of the key elements to the whole project is having office space occupied and paying the bills. So that's kind of what my questions were leading up to.
So
I'm kind of glad you brought that up, Pete. I didn't really want to open that box, but do we have a business plan to make this, work financially, which seems pretty important, I guess. But this project, it's a cool project. I fully support it, and that's why I switched to the living room of the Hollyhock House and in honor of Matthew Coates.
I love it, Alan.
But it seems like we should be able to formulate some sort of literally a business plan to make this work. It's going to be difficult.
I think at the time, Councilman Richrod, that was well conceived and in place, but that is several years old now, and we would have to revisit that. And that's a fair thing to ask, because it looks like Mr. Coates has been directed to kind of re-envision the interior. So we're going to have to look at that again on what would be going on in there. So my one question I had, and I can't recall the plans that you had up there, was one of the things that was really important to me, given how strapped our facilities are for events, is a kitchen. Does this interior redesign include a full kitchen?
There has been a lot of discussion about whether there would be a full kitchen. Currently, we're only showing a warming kitchen that would be suitable for caterers and things like that. Although there certainly were times when it was envisioned that there would be a full kitchen. And so I think that's something that you could discuss amongst yourselves. And if that's something that you wanted to do, we can accommodate it.
Because I know over the years, one of our busiest facilities, of course, is the Log Pavilion. And over the years, I've heard on numerous occasions that it was penny wise and pound foolish to only put a catering kitchen in that building, that it is, but it remains busy and booked months and months in advance. But that is a little bit something that I've heard numerous times over the years. Wouldn't it be nice if that had a kitchen? So, and I know that High School Commons at Aberdeen is booked consistently all through the summer because it has a kitchen.
I know my feeling is a full kitchen would be really important because that's something that is lacking in our.
Any other council members?
I certainly second that idea.
Pardon me for interrupting. This is Patrice. It looks like Councilmember Andrews has joined and she's indicated that she's muted, and I'm not sure if it's because of an action or not, but I wanted to give Ms. Soul a heads up on that.
I
Thank you.
noticed that she was there. She can unmute herself, or she should be able to. Because she's being allowed to speak.
All right, thank you.
Welcome, Councilwoman Tawny Andrews. Thank you. And I'm sorry that we started before you could get off work. And in fact, I would just share with the rest of the council that in the future, I think when we have workshops through the budget season, that 6:30 is a better time, because it seems like 6 o'clock is a push for several of us. So I think in the future, maybe we'll look at 6:30 if that's okay. So does any other?
I figured out my muting, so thank you.
Okay.
Council President Shaw, I have a question real quick.
Yes.
So one of the things that we also should reevaluate now with that full kitchen is the Seaport got a grant to put one in over there too, to use as a catering kitchen. And that's kind of where we had originally started with the catering kitchen for the Gateway Center. So that, I think that would be something that we'd want to look at as well, just to, I know that they're trying at the Seaport to do many things to keep the space relevant and going, and Nathan could probably add a little bit more to that, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, the kitchen at the Seaport is going, they are planning so far to have a full commercial kitchen in there. So, if that would suffice for the needs of the Gateway Center, and we would just need the warming kitchen in there, then that'd be pretty awesome.
I see that
I think it's a matter of cost as well as space. That's kind of amongst the other things mentioned that has led us to this type of kitchen. We originally wanted a full kitchen, and that's what we probably still prefer, but it's a matter of cost and space.
Well, I'm all for not ruling it out at a workshop, and let's make it a real decision based on facts and not just a perception of what may or may not happen over on the other side of the river. So
I had another question for Mr. Coates.
Go ahead.
Mr. Coates, could you discuss a bit the systems that you envision being part of this building that provide energy efficiency and will help keep the cost of running it down?
Sure. We haven't gotten super detailed with it yet, but there is an engineering consultant on board. Currently, the plan was to use a heat pump system that's highly efficient and make use of forced air, which is fairly typical. In terms of efficiency, I guess the good news from, if you're concerned about that, is that the energy code is going to be changing here in February and becoming much more strict and requiring better thermal insulation, makes us contemplate more strongly energy production as well. The windows and doors need to be much more efficient. As you probably know, that's where you lose a lot of your heat. So the requirements are changing to be quite strict in February in this building, since it most certainly won't be permitted before then would be subject to those higher standards. And but currently the mechanical system is designed as a forced air heat pump system that would be quite efficient and have, a lot of the efficiency comes down also to the controls and making sure that the zones are balanced well, so that you're not blowing heat where people don't want it or air conditioning where you don't need it. There needs to be further conversation with the museum if they are a major tenant, simply because having designed museums, I know that to protect artwork and art, things that need to be taken care of, you have to control the temperature and the humidity within a very close tolerance. And so that would require a larger mechanical system than what has been planned so far.
So I do have to kind of smile at that because for the last 10 years, our collection has been stored in a drafty old annex that.
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, our collection was recently valued at $1 million. It probably costs more than that to get the air around it in a museum quality.
Yeah, fair enough. And it may not be necessary. It's worth conversation, but thank you.
Yeah.
So we would have LED lighting, and is there a chance this building might meet LEED certification?
Sure. So absolutely, the building will have LED lighting. That's really the standard these days, and so lots of less energy use. We certainly have delivered many LEED buildings. The Bainbridge Island Museum of Art actually was the first LEED Gold museum in the country, so we're proud of that. Currently, that is in the plan to do a LEED building, but we're happy to, if council would direct us to do that, or through the mayor or Lisa, it's certainly something that we could do, although it hasn't been in the plan to actually meet a LEED standard.
So is it, I know you have something coming to us maybe in the coming weeks. Is it fair to ask that you put a number on the table on what it would cost to do that? Just a guesstimate if we wanted to go that route?
Sure, I think we could do that. I'm not aware, Lisa, are you expecting something from us? I don't recall that we are delivering anything.
I thought we were looking at a contract revision.
Yeah, the amendment. So the amendment is on, it's going to be on the agenda for next week.
Okay.
And that, included the revisions, updates. But I think what Council President Shaw is asking for is what, in addition, would it take to develop a LEED standard for the building?
Sure.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Whether it's gold or silver or.
So do you have a preference, like which level you would like?
I would defer to Council Member Ellis on that. I know enough to know that LEED is going to cost more, but would be in the long run very environmentally sound, and would be very proud of that. But I don't know what level we would want to look at.
What is LEED?
LEED, I can explain that quickly if that's okay. May I take that question?
Please.
The LEED is an acronym. It's LEED, stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And it is a tool created by the United States Green Building Council to basically to measure the greenness of a building. And it's the gold standard for that. They have an excellent process. They've been around since 1989. And it's changed a lot. It's changed. It's gotten worse, and now it's gotten a little better. So that's the good news. But I think there are advantages to it. My professional suggestion would be, having done many LEED buildings, is that the sweet spot is really a LEED Gold building. If you want to do a LEED Platinum, the costs kind of increase logarithmically, and the cost benefit is questionable compared to a gold. Gold is really the sweet spot. Although we'd love to do a LEED Platinum building for you, I want to be respectful of your money and make sure you're getting something for that money. And so there, it's a rated system. It's a point, so that like the shallow end of the pool is just like what they call a certified, and then there's silver, gold, and platinum.
Thank you.
That might dovetail into a question that Ruth Clements had here that says, what types of sustainable materials and efficient features will the building have? And is there allowance as well for alternative energies. We've got those battery banks sitting across the street, and solar panels could charge those. And I've noticed recently in touring around town, I was surprised at how many houses have solar panels on the roofs.
Yeah,
And it works here. Wind power is
Absolutely.
another thing that works really well.
Absolutely. There certainly can be provision for solar. I don't think it's in the budget right now. That was done some time ago, but I agree that that location is a great location. There's no trees or anything. You'd get, a lot of sun on that roof. So.
And the solar would help pay for the building and keep our power bill very low. And it seems like there's plenty of roof area to support quite a number of kilowatts. USDA has grant money for installing solar. So if the building were designed to accommodate that, we could look for funding.
Absolutely. It's easy.
Liz, do you know if that applies, those same types of things apply to wind as well?
Wind is a little more fickle because it comes and it goes. And I don't know, I'm thinking specifically of a USDA grant. And I know it funds solar. I'm not sure about wind.
Something more to look into.
Yeah.
More maintenance heavy as well.
Yes.
The wind, sure.
So someone asked about parking. What's the parking situation there? Asking for a friend.
The parking would largely take place in the lot across the street where those Tesla stations are. So that whole lot would be parking. And space for RVs and all that. That was the plan.
So, Mr. Coates, I think our original agreement with you had us going all the way through construction documents, bidding out the project, and even following it through to completion. And I know we're going to be looking at where are we at. Could you share with the council what the original timeline was and where we're at in the process now, and the revision that they're going to be asked to consider, and why the cost has gone up? Is that?
I don't know. Hutch, maybe you can speak up about the timeline. I don't recall what the timeline was. Please understand, it's been.
I know. I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but I thought if you knew, you'd help us.
Hutch may remember. It's been several years, and so I apologize that I don't remember. In terms of where we are, we were well into, I would say, late design development, early construction documents on the building. When we're sort of told, okay, this might change, we might go back to a 2-story building, and so we were pretty far down the pike. And the reason that there's a change amendment addendum is because we did this whole exercise, this detour of, we had a plan. We were doing a 2-story building, and we were well into it. And then we were told, no, we want it to be a 1-story building. And so we had to redesign the whole building. And it was a major detour. And we've kind of done that. Now we're back to maybe a 2-story building. And so the change addendum is for that detour, essentially. And so where we are now is if we receive direction to proceed with a 2-story building, kind of as I shown you, or some version of it, then we would go undertake the effort to adapt it into the new design and redesign the mechanical, redesign the structure, and all that. So it is a fair bit of work, but I think the good news is that this design actually does lend itself to going back to a 2-story option, and without too much change. It's not going to be dramatically different like it was the first time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with approval by council Wednesday night, next week, where are we going to be at that point, Lisa?
With approval, so the committee report will go to council for consideration next week. And then if the council were to give their approval, we would turn that back over to Matthew to prepare and get the final documents ready. And so Matthew, how, if we were gonna go with what we've discussed over the last couple months, how long would it take to complete to get those construction documents? Loaded question. Sorry.
I don't know, Hutch, do you have an idea? I don't know if you've, I hesitate to say right now. I don't have the schedules in front of me, so I really hesitate to say. Hutch, do you have
You know, that is a very hard question. As Matthew said, we had brought the project up to very early stages of construction documents. And then the concept has taken it back, and we're having to basically redo design development to a small degree and then carry it through CDs. And originally, I think overall the project was from schematic through CDs was on the order of, I want to say 9 months. And so how many months is going to take to pick it up? I think we could give a much better answer if we're able to go back and look at the old schedule and recast it and give you a much more accurate answer than off the cuff. But like Matthew says, it's not a complete redo. We've got benefit of a lot of work having already been done on the previous design that is all reusable. And we have, with this concept that Matthew showed tonight, we also did a concept cost estimate for that. So we've got a good departure point to really save time on it.
It feels like about 6 months. Like if my gut feeling is it's probably going to take about 6 months to kind of do the redesign that is necessary and re-engineer it, coordinate all that, and finish the documents and get it in for permit and bid. Well, we got to bid it too. So it feels like about 6 months.
And what we're talking about is the construction ready papers, the blueprints, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that would be everything with this approval. About 6 months. So I wish we had more, there's been a lot of good questions about, well, maybe we should do this, or maybe we should do that, or have this like this or like that.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of stuff up in the air or different opinions from the council, which is all good stuff. But
yeah.
So,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
At what point would we go in search of grant funding? At the point at which, before you were ready to go out to bid, so we would have a rough understanding of how much money we would need for grants and who our likely grantors might be?
You want me to take that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we've received money to get us to the construction documents from the state already. So to get us to that point has been paid for. Also, council gave authorization to have a project manager. So once, if we know as of next week what direction the council wants to take on going forward with the Gateway Center revision, we would put the contract out for the project manager, who would work with Matthew and see the project to the blueprints, to the construction, be with the city as we hire the consultant to contractor to build the building. But they're also going to be working with everyone else to buy down the cost of the project itself. So in other words, we would work with some of our local vendors to see if they would be interested in participating with the project. But I think that would be kind of worked out later, but we do whatever we could to buy that down.
Lisa, would it also be the project manager's job to seek occupants for office space, that sort of thing?
Correct. That would be correct.
Would that project manager come out of Coates's office, or would this be a independent, come from somewhere else?
Independent.
Okay.
So with all the contract requirements that we have with Mr. Coates to help manage the bid process and work with the contractors, that's not project management?
Project management would include complete oversight to the end of construction, including fundraising to cover the cost of the build, as well as finding, as the mayor mentioned, finding additional tenants for office space.
So project management is not construction management then? I mean, if I'm managing a construction project, I'm not fundraising, am I?
No, no.
Sorry, I just remember a while back in Public Works, we had a report come through to hire somebody on as a pretty much full-time project manager, I believe, for this kind of circumstance. I haven't seen anything, come of it yet. I think we were having problems actually finding somebody that wanted to take on the position, and then COVID hit, so
yeah,
we kind of shut all that down. So I think I believe that, I'm not totally certain, but I think that position might qualify for this.
I think you're possibly correct there, Nathan. The person that they thought they had squared away passed on the job, so they're back to still out there searching for the right person. And that person is, as you said, would be project manager, have those abilities. I think, though, where we might have some differences here is, and this person would be obviously of some help, but I think where we might have some differences is the Public Works Department has millions of dollars worth of projects that they want this person to be working on. So I don't know if they'd loan him to us or for this project or how that would work, but I'm sure he would be helpful.
So go ahead, Councilman.
Lisa was outlining the schedule and what we have budgeted and what the money is going for. And so an answer to Betty Worth's question is this considered the redesign? I mean, the money that we have set aside for this will take us up to the point that Matthew was talking about, to where we end up with, we have the paper, the blueprints. I don't know if they do blueprints anymore, but to where it's pre-construction ready, and we're not going to have to go out and dig up more money for just that. Is that correct? I guess the simple question is the money that we have set aside for this, what does that all cover?
It will cover the revision, and it also will cover the project management for the Gateway Center. And Council President Shaw, when we put the draft documents together for the project management, it did include in there seeing it through to construction. So if that changes, we can adapt with it. but it was included originally.
So that person would be Mr. Coates' chief contact for the city in managing the project.
The project management?
Yes, the project.
No, it would actually be, when we talked about this, it would be hiring a firm that would manage the entire project from when it was given approval to the very end when we do the ribbon cutting. And that project management would include a multitude of different things.
Okay. So with the exception of Council Member Richrod, I might be the only person that attended some of the community meetings that were very well attended when the Gateway was conceived, up at the college when it was, you know, just an idea. And one of the things that I want the council to share with the council that originally the Gateway Center was not an Aberdeen project. It was envisioned as a coastal project, and it's the Gateway Center, and it is to represent, celebrate the culture of our coastal community, and it's not just Aberdeen. So as the decision as we go, and the legislature bought into that and helped us get this far. So as we go forward, you know, as we look at expanding the footprint for museum purposes, the original building had history and culture and stuff into it, but I think we need to honor the process of how we got where we are, and realize that a whole lot of people bought into this idea of a building that was going to help all of our coastal communities. And not just be, I think I heard the phrase, you know, where we house Sam Ben's belt buckle, you know, so it's going to be a culture experience, not just an exhibit place. And I just share that because the making it the museum keeps coming up, and I just want the council to be aware that that is a departure from the original concept.
Yeah, Deanne, I have to agree with you. I mean, I've been on the council for 8 years now, so I was part of the original, you know, when all of this came about, and it was totally sold as a Grays Harbor project. It was to benefit all of us, you know, to have, you know, meeting rooms and event spaces where we could have large events and we could have, you know, lots of meetings. And the museum at that time was just a show place, you know, just a corner where they could show things. I'm kind of heartbroken that we broke away from the original design, because I love that design, you know, that, you know, the fly through we had. I mean, it was awesome. So I'm kind of disappointed that that went away, or that departure from that. But it was always a Grays Harbor project, not just to benefit Aberdeen. But I mean, wouldn't it be awesome to have a place where, you know, rather than taking all those lovely conventions out to Ocean Shores, they could have them in Aberdeen so that they could visit. It's just, okay, I'll just stop.
No, that's good stuff.
Well, I would agree with you, Tawny. I think if we could make it more of a whole Grays Harbor County thing, that would be great. And I was also in those beginning meetings and, you know, went through that process. And I also really bought into that idea. And I like the idea of the museum, our museum being a part of it, but this is just totally different than what my original vision was.
I think the issue that's kind of driven this to this point in its design has just, you're going to guess what I'm going to say, money.
Yeah.
And it's been an issue from the get-go how we're going to pay for this. And the county pretty much didn't want to participate. And so there's just been an issue after the whole time about how to pay for it, how to have enough occupancy to actually run a self-sufficient or
Sustaining.
economically stout building. And so that's kind of what's led things to get to this direction. But hey, this is a great time to talk about ideas. And
I think what also changed potentially the direction was the unfortunate Armory fire, and that was an opportunity to provide a need that the community has for a museum. And so I think some of that community space got shifted potentially into the open space downstairs, but it's still, I think Matthew brought up, excuse me, during his presentation that it's could still be opened up to large gatherings. And I think there was still in the design he kind of put up on the screen, potentially there's still the open space with the coffee and the whole atrium in the middle. And so I think there's some potentials to still do that. And then also what changed was that Greater Grays Harbor was no longer doing some of the visitor information that they had when we originally started. And I know we've had some discussions on what that looks like moving forward. And depending upon the direction the council chooses to go next week, we might be able to provide some additional answers to that. I hope that helped answer that.
Search settings. A little bit, but it's kind of disheartening that the council wasn't brought. I feel the council wasn't brought into the total.
You're absolutely 100% accurate, and I think that for having it revised to the first floor, that wasn't brought before council either. And so I think we're trying to correct that moving forward. And so trying to bring it back to the original design is where we're at. What is involved in that design, I think that yet has to remain a discussion with council of what it looks like on the inside. But I think that why I think Council President Shaw kind of put the brakes on, and rightfully so, is I don't know that council was ever brought in on that first floor design. So that's, I think, where the brakes got put on. So I think it's time to have that conversation, and and we can do that of what the interior could look like. So I think there's some potential out there, and I think it's good to have that conversation.
Well, I really appreciate that Matthew Coates is here because now he's here. He's getting probably a better feel for what kind of building that the council. These guys, they're pretty clever. They're pretty smart. They know how to listen to people's thoughts and then turn it into a vision. So I think that he's probably got some ideas rolling around right now, don't you, Matthew?
Yes, of course. I do like the discussion. I would like to point out 2 points, if I may. One is that you can have a museum and an event space that are in the same space. We designed the Bainbridge Museum that way. I know I've toured some of you through that, and I'm happy to do it again if some of you would like a tour. But they rent out the museum. Well, they used to, not since COVID, but they rent it.
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted.
We lost him.
You didn't hear any of that? That was weird.
The last 15 seconds.
Oh, okay. I was just saying that the Bainbridge Museum is rented out frequently. It used to be anyhow before COVID, and they use that as a significant revenue stream. And so people can rent it out and hold events there, parties in and around the artwork. And it actually worked out quite well for them. So again, if anyone wants another tour, I'm happy to give a tour of the Bainbridge Museum.
I think there's a lot of support for the museum idea. I just want us to be careful about calling it the Aberdeen Museum and hold true to, what people bought into. And, we don't clam dig in Aberdeen, but that's huge around here.
Absolutely. And I respect that you brought that up, because that was the original intent. It was for everyone and just to represent the culture of the area. I did want to point out, though, that if you do want a museum or there's a large museum component, that is fundamentally a different building than if there isn't. And so we would really need to know ahead of time before we embark on this next phase, if that is indeed the case. It would be really helpful if we had that information going into it.
Well, that's good direction for us. Thank you.
Excuse me. I'd like to ask one question, Mayor Shea, if I could. You would know, or maybe Lisa would know, do we have a set aside fund in case things stay slow in the city and we can't get these spaces rented? That at first it takes time to sell this to the public, or if the city stays slow, is the city going to have a hard time taking care of this here building if it's empty?
That's my biggest concern. I think I think if I heard your question right, I was struggling to hear you a little bit. Once the building is finished and we're up and running and the party streamers are swept up and put away, then what are we going to do to make the payment on the light bill and etc. So that's a big issue with one of the things that I'm concerned about with office space available, that sort of thing. And I don't know if you were here, Frank, when I asked the question, but there's about 6,000 square feet available for office space, which is actually quite a bit. That's a good question, because I was a little bit taken back when I learned a couple of things here. One was that the design of the building was changed and the second floor was removed. I didn't know that was happening. And the other one was that I heard from the legislators back before I was mayor. What are we going to do? How much money is the city putting in? And when I asked that question, well, how much are we supposed to put in? And the number they told me was $7 to $8 million. So where do we get $7 or $8 million to kick in to this project? If I had $7 or $8 million kicking around, I'd rather personally start the action to build a new police station or a new fire station. But by bringing the museum into this project, although it changes a lot of views from the original concept, it brings the whole project together to where it's still something feasible that we can do. But it still leaves us to need to calculate what the day-to-day expenses are going to be to operate this building, even with the museum in it. One nice thing about the museum is the Friends of the Museum are gung-ho ready to go, and they are very good fundraisers. They will be participating with the museum all the time. So, there's a lot of questions left out there and real things to be concerned about. So I don't know if I answered your question. I certainly talked long enough, but
no, you did an excellent job. I think it brought it out for everybody else to hear the concerns that some of us have. And thank you very much, Mayor.
That is an interesting question, though, in terms of the city coming up with 7 to 8 million. I know that there's a variety of grant sources just at the state level that that would be appropriate for a new building like this, but but we have all kinds of needs in the city, and I know it would be helpful for me and perhaps other council members too, to have an idea of what's the big picture of our funding needs from, say, grant funds, and as well, what's our ability to borrow money if we can get a low interest loan from one of these agencies? Is that something that's available to us, or because of our bonding status, we're already maybe up to our ears?
We have a real good rating for bonding.
Super. As a new council member, those are things that I'd like to get up to speed with.
And we don't have a lot of debt right now. Public Works maybe, but general obligation bonds, no.
Great.
I smell another workshop or two.
I think these are good. You know, one of the things that these are, it is, you know, we do want the building to sustain itself and be successful. And these are some of the same questions that came up when the Rotarians envisioned a log pavilion and then gifted it to the city for us to run. And so I think those numbers can be penciled out and those decisions can be made and asked and answered, because the log pavilion, that's how they figure out what to charge people based on what it costs to run it. And that's called, you know, so some of that stuff, we can't let not knowing get in the way of finding out.
Yeah. And what's the alternative? I mean, let's say we decide that okay, we're not going to do this. We can't do it. There's just no way to pencil it out. So we're not going to do it. I'm not sure what the dollar amount is, but there's probably, I should know the number, but Lisa probably knows. There's a few $1 million that we'd have to pay back to the state for nothing, and then we'd have nothing. So that's our alternative if we can't figure this out.
That is correct.
I have a high degree of optimism that we can do a lot of work even in the middle of a pandemic to figure out how we're going to hit the ground running when we're ready. And
well said.
This city committed to this project, and the others are also things that we have to address. But we can't get so wrapped around the axle at the enormity of our task that we end up doing nothing.
Yep. Well said. So I would.
Okay, let's set up a couple workshops.
I think we have workshops through the end of the year, Councilman, for budget stuff. It should be pretty easy to keep this conversation going as we go along.
Well, I wasn't thinking specifically of the budget. I was thinking specifically of this. Have one, for example, have one on the operations, business and operations of it, and have one maybe previous on finalizing the design.
I think we can get, well, right now, the finalizing the design is paid for. So we can move forward with that if you choose.
Okay.
And we can work from there. By putting the museum and including it with the project, not making the project the museum, but including the museum in it, I feel justified in using enough of that museum money to get us going on this, to get us up to get us to where we have a building in place. But there's still a lot of questions in my mind anyway onto how we're going to maintain the building day to day and on and on.
Yeah.
So
I agree. We're going to have to do that no matter what.
And one thing I see is that we have a lot of new members on council. Have we covered all the bases in line to get to some of these other decisions? I mean, do they have enough background? Do we all have enough background? That makes sense?
Cumulatively? You like Moneyball?
I think what Council Member Short is alluding to is, and we have asked this a lot, is what is the big picture? We know we have a lot of needs, but we keep talking each year at this time. We keep talking about a facilities plan and what
That's
does that
true.
look like, and so we have a bigger picture idea of what we got to start chewing at.
Well, okay, let me explain something again, I think.
Just go get that plan for us, Pete.
well, here's the thing. You're right. We need a facilities plan. We need money set in that plan. We need stuff to happen there. I could give you a list of stuff that needs to be done facilities wise. But we need a police station. We need a fire station. We need 2 fire stations actually, and all this stuff. But we can't actually look at this as one need in total, because I cannot justify using this insurance money without accommodating the museum in some fashion.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying that we need to build a whole new museum with it. I'm saying we need to accommodate the museum in some suitable fashion that'll get us through until we can build on it and to a place we have a full museum. But to take their money, I say, not necessarily their money, to take the insurance money that was from the loss of our museum in our armory building. Don't forget we had CAP in that building also, and not put some of it back into accommodating the museum makes it hard for me to justify using all that for other things like the fire stations and the police stations and so on. You know, maybe some of it we can use for that, or use to build on some other funding or grants or so on. But I really think we need to use some of it for the museum, and by adding the museum with the Gateway building, which we were struggling with the funding source for that. I think it accommodates a double purpose right there. We could end up with a beautiful building to start off, hopefully some sort of a chain reaction, let's say, for development downtown, plus have us a place to display for the museum, plus have Greater Grace Harbor, a new location that's better suitable for the public, nice parking lot, all those things by combining some of this. But so to keep this picture separate from the fire stations and the police station and the maintenance that we need to do on City Hall and all these things, I think is kind of important.
Okay.
I agree.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And at the risk of cutting anyone off, I'll just share that it's 7:15, and this has been great, but we still have another agenda item. And unless somebody had anything really pressing that they were wanted to hear or ask Mr. Coates about, I would suggest that we move on to our next agenda item.
Councilmember Shaw,
Yes.
we have 3 members of the museum board, and one of them sent me an email of questions he would like to ask. Don Lentz. I don't know if you want to accommodate that or not. So I know you had wanted me to have them able to speak at the meeting, so they've all been given permission.
Well, in case the council had questions for them, but if Mr. Lentz is asked to speak, I'll honor that. We don't have answers, Don. I think that became pretty clear tonight. But please.
You should be able to unmute yourself, Mr. Lentz. And
he's gone.
okay, not unmuting himself.
Okay. Well, Don, any of us are always happy to talk with you, and we also have a meeting next Wednesday. We'll look at, if you put your questions, send your questions, we'll do our best to answer them next week, if you can hear me. With the council's permission, I'd like to move on to our budget presentation, the information from Director Soul.
Council President Shaw, may
Yes.
I ask one more follow-up based on the discussion about the original intent for the space being more regional? How does the Aberdeen Museum Board feel about playing the role of helping to tell the story of our coastal communities beyond just Aberdeen? Does that fit with their mission? I know in part it does, but
I think they've talked about that, and I think that we have one of the museum board members is also the director of the South Beach Museum. Maybe John Shaw would respond to that for you.
Thank you.
Am I supposed to talk now?
No.
Liz, to answer your question, very early in the establishment of the board by the previous mayor, by Eric, Eric came to a meeting and asked us to consider what the Aberdeen Museum of History could do as a form of engagement at the Gateway. And we had a very nice discussion, and we had the board discuss various options. We met with Mr. Coates at the time about what that would look like. And I would say, to answer your question, yes, I think the board was very comfortable with that, because it gives us a chance to tell the story of the geography, the rivers, the first peoples, what made Grays Harbor what it is. And it's a cohesive story, and it would allow us to tell Aberdeen's story of how it fits in as well. But there was a very good discussion of creating a macro look for Grays Harbor.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Lentz is unmuted with his hand up if you would like to allow him to speak.
Hi, Mr. Lentz. If it sounds like you had a couple questions for us. Okay, well, Don, we'll be happy to take your questions on at our next meeting if we can get the answers for you. I think he's having technical difficulties.
Yeah, it looks like he can talk, but it's not working. So
right. Well, he knows that we're happy to. We're going to play this out. We're going to have a good process. So we'll figure it out. So Director Soul, I will turn it over to you to share what you have for us on the budget.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Maybe.
Okay, so I'm going to go through more of an informational presentation this time to discuss something that's different this year than last year. It's only happened 5 times in the last, I think, 20 some years. where the IPD or the implicit price deflator is below 1%. The way that I'll go through the steps.
The picture's not showing.
Yeah, it's not there.
Can't see it?
No.
No.
There you go.
There you go.
Yay.
It's showing now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, yeah, it's not showing on my screen. Okay. So the implicit price deflator and 1% cap on property tax was put in place by Initiative 747, and it's under RCW 8455. Due to the bill that passed, the initiative that passed quite a while ago, 1% is the maximum limit of increase allowed to levy for property tax. If the IPD is greater than 1%, then the 1% limit applies once an ordinance is passed by council. The county has to receive that approved ordinance by November 30th. If the IPD is less than 1%, 2 steps must happen to receive the 1%. The ordinance must be passed by council asking for 1%, and a second ordinance of substantial need must be passed by council if you're a city of over 10,000, which we are. The IPD is a measure of inflation tied to property tax or implicit price deflator. It's an index for personal consumption expenditures. It's used to measure inflation. The IPD rate for 2020 and 2021 is at 0.60152, which is less than 1%. I have a history here of the different years from 1998 through this year, and there's only been 5 times that the IPD was below 1%. 2009, of course, during the inflation or the recession, and then 2015 and 16, it was there. It went way up, and then it came back down this year. The process necessary if the IPD is below 1% is council, if council chooses to levy the maximum 1%. Like I said, an ordinance required and a second ordinance showing a finding of substantial need. Both ordinances must be passed by city council for the 1% levy to be approved and certified. Levy scenarios with the increase defined. You have 4 options: make no change, levy the IPD amount of 0.602%, levy the maximum of 1%, or levy 602% but bank the 0.398 for future needs. This graph shows you the impact that has occurred because of the limit that was put on the increase that you can do to property tax. The bottom line in the graph is what the percent over time from 2002 through 2019 increase over that time is 19.61%. The middle line is the IPD, so it's at 37.09. And the top line is what the Seattle CPIU or the inflation rate is for Seattle, which is mainly the measure for the Western Coast. It's a 30.08% difference between Seattle CPU and the 1% rate ceiling for property tax. Inflation rate is 2.5 times higher than the property tax increase due to the 1% limitation. Why a 1% tax levy is needed or desired is to keep pace with the long-term impact of inflation, to maintain the existing level of services provided by the city to its citizens. Current revenue projections include the 1% tax levy at this point. Long-term investment, it ensures sustainability of the 2021 budget. It contributes towards sustainability plans for the future. What if we don't increase the levy? It will require cuts in the amount budgeted for 2021 expenditures relying on the 1% increase in property tax. And these cuts will go forward impacting our recurring expenses. So when we define substantial need, I pulled a few things. We're still middle budget, so these are just the first 3 that definitely I have seen. And these are 2 current expense fund, which is where the property tax levy goes, could be used to justify the substantial need. Increasing public defender and indigent defense costs, those are going through the roof. Increasing insurance premiums for liability, property, and medical cost. Salary COLAs for represented and non-represented staff, and other areas that will show up during the final draft of the budget. This was just a brief overview, so you had an understanding of what the difference would be this year compared to prior years, other than 15 and 16 in recent years. So do you have any questions for me?
I have a question. I have two questions. Number one is, if we don't implement the 1% or what we're entitled to, doesn't that affect us the next year as far as what we're allowed to request?
It does change what our ability to, I believe it does on the certified, what our certified rate is. It also, it's a reoccurring issue. If you don't pull in the funding that you're allowed, since it's already limited, then it takes a roll forward effect. You're now 1% increase below where you would have been if you had taken that increase.
My second question is, when we submit a second ordinance for the need, how will our reserve account affect that? Because we have the insurance money sitting there right now.
It doesn't look at the reserve. It's about what's going on. And if we're planning on replacing buildings with that reserve, it won't go to current expenses typically, if that's the plan that council makes. So this is more about substantial need in changes to the outgoing current expenses, the reoccurring type of expenses.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I just had a quick question. Is there any kind of benefit or something that we can offer to people that might be, or to homeowners or property owners that might be, affected by COVID, and that, this increase would be a real hardship to, because it looks like we kind of have to do this in order to maintain a certain status. But it'd be nice to also be able to have some kind of rebate or something that we can offer people that are really struggling right now.
I'm not sure if the city can offer that or if the county offers that or how that works, but typically the CARES funding that we receive can't be based on increases or decreases of revenues to the city. It has to be based on expenses that are COVID related. This is a normal process for cities to increase their property tax. So I'd have to research that. But my first instinct would be to say it would probably have to come from a different source, or the city would have to set aside something that they have available to set aside to do that. And that would be something I need to look into also.
Anyone have any other questions?
Could
I
you,
was just going to say, I don't think the 1% number is all that huge
No, it's
as far as relating to something like Nathan was referring to.
Yeah, it's I think last year's was around 60,000 to the overall current expense fund, but we'll know more once I get the numbers from the county. I don't have any numbers to give you any kind of estimate at this point.
Patricia, could you clarify for me if we're at 0.6, then taxes would have to go up just under 0.4 to make up the 1%?
Actually, the 6.6 would mean we would be under that 0.4. And if we don't set it aside or reserve it, we lose it.
Oh.
For any new council members that are curious, and I don't know if you need to hear this, but this has been pretty standard, Paul. Yeah, a pretty standard event every year for as long as I can remember, because we're limited on their property tax increases and they never keep up with inflation, but we're allowed this 1%. And that's it. So we've used this procedure pretty much as long as I can remember, but I can assure you it doesn't keep up with the costs. It just helps.
The percentage cost of running the city next year is going to be more than 1%. It's going to go up more than 1%. And so what we're able
Absolutely.
to collect in property taxes doesn't keep pace with the cost of doing business.
Absolutely.
Good way of saying it.
So anyone else have any questions for Patricia?
Yes, Frank Gordon here.
Please.
The biggest question I have, this tax change we have, we definitely need, but to sell it to the people of Aberdeen, we're going to have an issue this time because for the first time in a long time, we're adjusting our water rates, our sewer rates, everything else. So we're going to have all of a sudden, not just this small raise, we're going to have a whole chunk coming at once. And I think the city should really get together and find a way to make sure we explain to the people of the city how this is a necessary function, because there's going to be a lot of people going into a shock in 2021. Let me tell you, when all our different prices come through. So I think we really need to work on selling this.
There's a way that I have done in the past where I can take what that increase would be and convert it into what it would impact taxpayers based on the size, their value of their home, using the levy, and it'll show the city's increase. Normally for property taxes, you're not as big as the pool or the other things that are being increased. So it is a good demonstration. It helps explain it. So I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I would like to say, I think that's a great idea. I'd also like to say thank you, Patricia, for this information. It really helps me as a new council member to understand how the process works.
Thank you.
And we just appreciate being able to see you and hear you since you're still new to our city, and it's been nice to be able to have this meeting this way. I appreciate it. I know I've dwelt on it already, but nobody at City Hall needed more to do, and it was a lift for them to do this for us. And this has been nice. I have liked this format, and so thank you.
You're welcome.
So if nobody has any other questions for Patricia, that concludes our actual agenda items, but we always allow time for comments. And I don't know if the mayor had anything else he wanted to share with us tonight.
Well, thank you. I think I've already probably said enough. So
Okay.
I didn't have anything else.
I'm not going to disagree. I'm just kidding. I just know that people is starting to get a little late, and we try to keep these moving along. So Councilwoman Andrews, did you have anything to share tonight? Did you lose her?
Unmute.
She's probably stirring her gourmet dinner or something she's cooking.
Council President Shaw, Dave Havlin's on too.
I saw that. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ellis.
This has been really helpful for me, and I really like the design. It sounds like we've got a really excellent architectural firm that we'll be working with, we'll continue to work with. And I like the idea of having a museum exhibit space as part of this welcome center. I would hope that since parking is primarily across the street, that they'll look at maybe doing a crosswalk, a mid-block crosswalk that helps people get right to the front door without jaywalking.
They do have a plan for that.
Oh, good. Excellent. And the budget information has also been very helpful, and I look forward to another workshop that talks about budgeting things more in depth. Thank you.
Councilmember Francie.
Hi. I don't really have anything at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gordon.
Yeah, thank you. It's been an excellent meeting tonight, and if everybody would be really quick, I'm ready for dinner. Thank you.
Councilmember Haviland.
I don't really have anything to add, but I appreciate the ability to enjoy the Zoom meeting. And you said that, as you mentioned, the face-to-face conversations. That's nice. Thank you.
And I know that Councilmember Kennedy.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to once again thank everybody for all the hard work that they put into this presentation tonight. It's definitely informative, and thank you for putting up with some of our newbie questions. there will be lots of them. So thank you, and it's great to see everybody.
Councilmember Mackey.
Yes, I really don't have anything other than it's really nice to see everybody's faces again. I've enjoyed this meeting. Thank you very much.
Good to see you too. Councilmember Richrod.
This was really great. I probably have a couple of questions, maybe or discussions. I might see if I can call Director Soul with a city accounting 101 question, something very simplistic.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, and just to get directly so I understand what we're talking about. And Liz, I might give you a buzz and you and I can talk about energy efficiency. So thank you very much. This has been good.
Councilmember Ross.
I'd just like to say I'm loving this Zoom. And for those of you who can't tell, we're traveling across the state. So I'm in my car, but it worked. So thank you.
Great. And Councilmember Short.
I appreciate the Zoom. I really do. And all the help that I got from Wayne getting on Zoom. But it's been a good meeting. I appreciate we've got a lot to learn, lot of learning done, but we've got a long ways to go. So.
Okay. Well, like the mayor, I think I've said enough tonight. So we'll go on to the next agenda item, which is next steps. And what?
One real thing real quick before you sign us out of here.
Okay.
And that's to thank Coates for being here and helping, and Lisa for setting that up. Thank you.
I think he checked out. But yes, it's not like he had to drive.
He's probably glad.
Yeah.
Actually, that works out great because he has been here to several of our meetings actually.
Yes.
In the past. So I think we've discussed next steps. Next steps are there will be some information coming to us for consideration at our next meeting. I certainly don't want to rush the council, but I hope that we can, if you have any questions about when the agenda comes out, ask Director Scott, myself, or the mayor. Will do our best to get your questions answered before the meeting. And if there's nothing further from the council, I would declare us adjourned.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
to see everybody. Stay healthy.
Yes.